Something like that. So, I mean, the Galar region, compared to Breath of the Wild, is kind of insane. It's so big, I don't want to believe it. Excuse me, Game Freak, but you need to calm down before you accidentally make the best Nintendo Switch game of all time, not to mention the best Pokemon game that we have seen so far. So this information is coming from one of the many Pokemon Sword and Shield reviews that have been published today, as Games Press gets a hold of a 2-hour demo of Pokemon Sword and Shield. But the wild area is a fairly large open-world location. The Pokemon Company rep on hand estimated it was about the size of 2 regions from Breath of the Wild. Here you have control of the camera and can see Pokemon roaming about on their own as bees flit around flowers, fish, Pokemon jump in the lakes, larger creatures such as Onix, which you're warned not to get close to because they're too high level, wander about freely. Wait a second, twice the size of a region in Breath of the Wild? Breath of the Wild's a pretty big game, and those regions feel quite expansive. And the wild area is 2 of them. Okay, I haven't played Breath of the Wild in a while. Let's get a refresher so we can really feel the scale of what's going on here and try to estimate how this plays out. Because the wild area is too large for me to comprehend, even though we already have, like, an idea of how much is going to be inside the wild area. From Koro, they have, like, their little Pokemon Sword and Shield guide. But, I mean, you just look at that. We already knew the wild area is large. We already knew the wild area is massive. You just look at the trailers, and it just kind of goes on forever. You know, we have like these little Pokemon in dozens or hundreds of patches of grass, that's not wild area, you know, being spread around. And this goes back to, you know, the second Pokemon Sword and Shield trailer, where we just kind of get this insane scale and the sense of the region and all the things about it. And then there was the E3 gameplay. Like, we know this place is huge from the E3 gameplay because they just wander around for like 15 minutes and they explore like one little part of the wild area. And even with that view, like, you can see all around, you can see so many places to explore. Let's just hopefully hop in somewhere where they run around. Like, they get on their bike, they go uphill, they go around. You can see so much fun stuff way off in the background. We also just have the Nintendo Direct showing us more areas. Like, look at that. Look at that little pathway. Like, that's huge. And we knew this, but we didn't know how huge. And it's going to... I'm dumbfounded by this one, guys. And then you look at this, and there's so many dens for not Gigantamax, but Dynamax Pokemon. So you have, like, the max raid battles and stuff. All these little dots, those are max raid battles. And we can see how far apart those dots are from the demo gameplay at E3 and stuff like that. So, let's see if we can get a good look. So yeah, all of those, like, those aren't even all of them, because some of them don't have a Pokemon in. If it has a red beam of light, that means you can do a Dynamax encounter. So, I mean, compare that to that, and then multiply that by, like, 5, and that's just a part of the wild area. So yeah, let's get into Breath of the Wild, and... Wait, regions? Man, I barely remember how to play these games, but the first thing I noticed is that Breath of the Wild feels a lot smaller than I remember, especially after seeing all of that information and gameplay about the wild area. Like, there's the Divine Beast, guys. That's most of the corners of the map being covered right there, and right past the Great Plains, we have Ganon's Castle. Now, it is pretty far away. I remember that took a while to explore and to get to, but even when we go and look at the Great Plateau, like, Great Plateau is really small. Let's see if I can zoom in and kind of get an idea. So yeah, like, that's some of the boundary right there. And then there's, like, the Snowy Mountain. That's too far. And then it's just kind of over. And the Great Plateau was hours of gameplay. We're trying to learn the game for the first time and stuff. So it feels really small. And I was like, you know what? If the wild area is only the size of the Great Plateau, that would be fine. But the wild area seems like it's going to be even larger than that, which is kind of insane. I want to be really conservative on this one. Now, I'm not trying to be, like, over-glorifying Game Freak and making it more than it is, because, like, when you hear 2 regions, that feels almost impossible. Those yellow outlines are regions. So, I mean, some of these regions are massive. Like, it's hard to, you know, kind of quantify that when there are different sized regions. But what about if we just take, like, Ridgeland and Tabantha? Like, what if these 2 areas... Is that it? Like, could that be the size of the wild area? And even in the scale of Breath of the Wild, that's still a lot. Because the wild area isn't even the entire map for Pokemon Sword and Shield. Like, the wild area feels as large as an entire region. Like, if you took all of the encountable areas in the Alola region for Pokemon, the wild area is probably as big as that, if not bigger. So what I want to do is I want to take Faron and the Great Plateau and just kind of feel the size of that and see if those two combined is about the size of the wild area. Yeah, and I mean, like, look at that. The Great Plateau is actually pretty small. Like, whoop, that's kind of it right there, guys. And there's tons of shrines and tons of other things to do. And then the rest of it is really weird. Like, I feel like there's a lot of things that make this game feel the way that it does, and it creates like a lot of weird things because you can use the glider and you can cover a lot of distance in a very short amount of time. I think the biggest difference comparing it to the wild area in Pokemon Sword and Shield is that the wild area isn't very vertical, but Breath of the Wild is very vertical, so you can get like a high vantage point and you can see for a very long ways. There's also like a lot of mountains, there's a lot of things that are hard to climb and hard to scale. I think the stamina bar is also maybe the biggest reason as to why Breath of the Wild feels larger than it is, because if you only have one stamina bar, you're going to run out quick. So even exploring the early areas, or as you're trying to like clear through the game for the first time, you're going to run out, and then like now you're stuck walking, and it looks like you can just kind of trot along at a faster pace in Pokemon Sword and Shield compared to just kind of like slowly stumbling through the map on Breath of the Wild. So I think there are like some things that are going to make it different, especially if we have our bike. So running's faster, probably like maybe even faster than sprinting, or at least comparable to sprinting on the amount of distance covered. Oh crap, it's getting dark. I'm not prepared for this because I don't remember how to play that well. Yeah, and also, like, look how fast we're going. So we compare that to the speed that we see us moving through the wild area, or how the camera pans through the wild area, and it feels about right. So you take, like, the Rotom... Why, game? Why must you hate me? That's the cool thing about Breath of the Wild. I feel like it's going to be like that. You know, all that enjoyment of how difficult and screw you Breath of the Wild is, I feel like we're going to have that inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield because of all the high-level Pokemon and things trying to get to us. So there's going to be some hilarious moments, much like in Pokemon Let's Go. You know, you get cornered by some Pokemon you don't want to encounter, well now it's actually battle, and now they're going to be stronger than you. And then just kind of like going through the Great Plateau again and remembering what we've seen from the speedruns and stuff, they can tear through this game in a really short amount of time. Now it takes incredible amounts of optimization, and they are doing like some pretty cheeky, glitchy stuff, but even then, like, as we watch ourselves kind of like go through the wild area, it's really, really kind of crazy. So yeah, you run into a high-level Machoke, you get one shot just like that. I'm going to kind of fly until I run out of stamina or something. So, I mean, if you take this game on a purely, like, horizontal level with Breath of the Wild, it's not that large. It's mostly, like, going up and down, all those other things that take up time. But if we go and look at Pokemon Sword and Shield right now from the E3 demo gameplay, or not, yeah, demo gameplay, I guess, we're kind of going around. You can still see a lot in the background. They go and they pull out the bike, and then they can, like, tear through the area with the bike, but it still takes a good amount of time. So I feel like I'm going through Breath of the Wild faster than I remember, especially like just now and like watching other people go through it. But even then, like, they cover a good amount of distance, and it does seem like something in the distance closes in on you faster compared to Breath of the Wild for sure. But I mean, that's just like taking it all into scale. That we're still doing pretty well when it comes to how far we've traveled in Breath of the Wild. And then with this, you're going to be stopped by Pokemon. You have all kinds of other things going on. Again, it's hard to compare, but I mean, we just went from, where is it, this shrine to this shrine. So we covered that much distance in just a very small amount of commentary. And when you scale it up, yeah, it is pretty big, but not all of this stuff in the map is explorable. Like, that's off limits, stuff like that is off limits. So when you take that little mark, and then you multiply it by a lot, and then you compare it to, like, 2 regions with what we've seen in Pokemon Sword and Shield, it sounds about right. So, I mean, like, the wild area could be, it won't let me, it's not that small, and it's not that big, so it's somewhere in between that for the wild area. Like, maybe if we went to outline it, you know, I will say something like that, except Faron is bigger, so maybe even a bit more. Add in that marshy area. It's crazy. So let's see if we can figure out the scale, because it's not just the wild area for Galar. As I keep saying throughout this video, how big is Galar compared to Breath of the Wild? Now, if I don't feel like that what the guy says is correct, but I kind of feel like it's also correct. Maybe he is misremembering Breath of the Wild. He's just like, yeah, wild area is huge. That's what he's trying to say. And that's all we really need to know. So, I mean, Great Plateau plus, you know, Faron, like, even if it's that big, Could the wild, from what we explored, you know, Great Plateau is one of the smallest areas. Maybe the guy was thinking like it was just 2 Great Plateaus or something like that. We covered a lot of distance in a pretty short amount of time. So I mean, we went from like there to there, and then going from like, okay, actually, yeah, let's put that in like this. So going from there to there took what, 30 seconds, and we see from the bike travel, I don't know, I feel like it wants to be smaller, you know, something like that. So maybe like 2 Great Plateaus, a little bit of this extra area, something maybe at least as large as, you know, one region, like one of the more medium, larger size region or something like that. Or also if we like rotate it, try to fit it into here. I mean, remember, we're playing around with like the entire Galar region with this. So let's just say that's the wild area. The distance from the Great Plateau to Ganon's castle lengthwise, and then the other kind of dimensions kind of fit in. Maybe that's also what he's going for. You know, not the volume, but the dimensions are kind of like that size. So, you know, we have like the height and the width of a region inside of that. But I mean, that still is pretty significant. So let's go pop in the Galar region, and now we can scale this up to kind of, well, not that. Now we can scale this up to kind of get to fit again. And still go a little bigger. Because I drew the line out here, so something like that. So, I mean, the Galar region, compared to Breath of the Wild, is kind of insane. It's so big, I don't want to believe it. And even if it's smaller than that, it's still like a massive size, because there's more to Pokemon Sword and Shield than there is to Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild just kind of reuses enemies, drops them around in some empty areas, and people are like, oh, the wild area feels empty from the E3 demo gameplay because they're nonsense and they're just lying about the game for some unknown reason at this point, because they're ill, I guess. So yeah, they're making up all this crap about the games, but when you look at it, it's like, there's still a lot going on. So, I mean, Breath of the Wild kind of feels empty until it isn't. Monsters pop up, you have, like, some new-looking terrains and landmarks and stuff, and we see that inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield as well. You know, like the spooky castle or the desert kind of area, and then everything else around. Like, when you look at that, we finally get some vertical scale inside of it, and we kind of get to see, like, Ganon's tower in the background a bit as well, and this is just a small part of the wild area. So, I mean, when we pull this back up, you know, it's like, compared to this part of the map, it's like you are here. If we go back into Photoshop and we try to, like, map that out, so we're here compared to the castle, so I think that's kind of the angle. I mean, we still have all of that other distance to go, and then we remove the map. That's a lot of distance compared to Breath of the Wild. And that seems about right from the picture. Nah. I refuse to believe. But it is. Okay, I need to get some more references, because I'm the one that people are mad at because I like Pokemon Sword and Shield too much, and I'm kind of in disbelief of what I'm seeing here. So what I've done is I've taken the map that we've been using, and I've kind of imposed it over the in-game map to kind of get a real sense of scale. But I mean, even if the wild area is just the size of Dueling Peaks and the Great Plateau, that's insane. And Dueling Peaks and Great Plateau are like the 2 smallest regions in Breath of the Wild. So that's why I have like all of this kind of set up over here. So think I got it pretty accurate. Either way, let's get into the game. I haven't even looked at it yet. So, ooh. My computer is not happy I'm recording and using Photoshop. Okay, so we are now facing Great Plateau. Let's pop off. Oh, let's try to get a bit more gliding than that. I mean, this actually works out, because then it's going to show more ground coverage. Again, I think we're just going to be faster in Pokemon Sword and Shield, and maybe this is just like gameplay design limiting how the movement felt in Breath of the Wild, which made the region feel a lot larger. Because like once you get a horse, once you get a lot of stamina, as I've kind of said, like it goes by pretty quick. So I mean, just from the gameplay we've seen of Pokemon Sword and Shield, even going through like this forest area, we can cover it pretty quickly inside of Breath of the Wild, and that's like on max sprint and stuff like that. Also, if we have the bike, you know, I didn't download the Champions Ballad, and apparently that like mountain area on the left is new. Again, I haven't played this game, and I never played the new DLC or anything like that. So I mean, even if you took the bike and like tore through the game, it would feel a lot smaller. So I mean, I've just been doing some basic commentary for like less than a minute now. Oh, let's go on. And we made it from the tower to this hill, and we can check on the map how much distance that is. I mean, guys, no. We did not go that... We didn't go from here to here in that short of time by running, and then when we make it up to this hill, and we, like, glide to the gates of the, like, the front of the Great Plateau, it's gonna feel too fast. Especially what we've seen in Pokemon Sword and Shield. So, get our stamina, see where we are. Great Plateau is... it's still off in the distance, so, you know, something like that. And then there's just kind of like a lot of nothing. So there's going to be more to do in Pokemon Sword and Shield for the wild area, kind of running around with what we've seen, going through the paths, encountering Pokemon the whole way, scaling it up a bit more. I'm kind of at a loss for words. Okay, so I feel like I was a little overzealous when it came to my Photoshop of how this relates to the castle, because, like, the courtyard is pretty big, and when we compare it to this, it seems a bit closer, but once again, the camera angle is kind of down and makes it feel a little more weird or something like that, so this gives me a decent idea with how that works. Like, if we just kind of treat this as, like, where the castle is, maybe go out a little bit more, and then kind of ignore all this stuff when trying to compare it to the maps, I think we'll get something pretty accurate. Actually, I might not have been as far off as I thought, because I overshot the outline of the wild area, so that's more what it's looking like. And then we get rid of this. Well, let's hit that, get rid of this, get rid of that, and that actually looks right. What? I still have, like, refusal. You know, I ran across... I went through all the Guardians and stuff. It felt like the distance that we see inside the trailer. I mean, we can still, you know, transform and rotate this around. And it feels kind of like great, you know, the Great Plateau plus some of the Dueling Peaks. I mean, all of Dueling Peaks fits inside this, and then Great Plateau. And also, like I said, it could also just be dimension-wise, not necessarily volume-wise. And that's still very compelling. So that's the size of the Galar region, roughly compared to Pokemon, not to Breath of the Wild. But also this is going to be different. You know, this angle is kind of like a wide, very, like, elongated, stretched out kind of angle. If this was a top-down view, I think it would actually get even, like, longer. That's where perspective comes into play and things get really weird. Like, this is roughly our look of the Galar region. We're looking at it from an angle, whereas for Breath of the Wild, this is going to be a top-down view. So that's going to, like, skew things. So if we, like, flatten this out, and then also, like, it depends on the height. You know, if we, like, flatten this out and came from a higher up point of view, the Galar region is going to be larger than this. Because, I mean, I don't imagine that this area is going to be as big as, like, this area in the wild area, you know, like, one-to-one like that or something. But, I mean, this city's still massive. This city's still huge. The individual routes are going to be crazy. And nothing makes sense to me anymore, guys. But I mean, like, what if this is like a whole path? What if this is like the snowy area? There's more than one wild area, because Game Freak be crazy like that. Also, this forest is going to be a lot larger to walk around in than what we see right here. Let's just go with that. Let's just go with this roughly. I mean, it's still not as big as Breath of the Wild, but I mean, 2 regions for the wild area, scaling that up to the rest of the size of the Galar region, and then matching that to the map. It's nutty. Nah. So if you guys enjoy the video, hope you have a nice day. Thank you very much. Nah.